welcome to Brew Tap Cast. I am Tap here for another Flesh and Blood Monarch Precon Blitz upgrade video. Today we're going over Levia. We're going over the Shadow Brute of the Monarch set, and that's our deck today. If you're looking for Chain or Prism, go ahead and check the links below or on screen now. We did those in the past couple weeks. Next we'll be doing Bolton, so if you're looking for Bolton, wait a week. But without any further ado, let's just jump right into the decks. Alrighty, so here is the actual deck that Alice has put out. It's a fairly straightforward deck. It's nice. It's not hugely tuned around Levia's Blood Debt trigger or turning off trigger. And that's sort of what you want to do. You want to have these big, beefy attacks that happen to have Blood Debt, that aren't too expensive, and basically just smashing in with those. And then things get banished. You get maybe some power upgrades. But then in the Banish Zone, they're going to hurt you, those Blood Debt cards. Her hero ability helps you turn that off. And so really what you're trying to do is maximize the number of 6s in your deck so you can actually trigger that. One thing to note, and the Lady of Bartholomew, the card on the screen right now, the Mentor, for some reason doesn't show up in fab.net right now. That actually does count for banishing as well. That's pretty cool. So if you activate that and you do banish a card with 6 or greater power, that will turn off Blood Debt for the turn, as well as actually trigger her to give the Dominate and all that good stuff. So, that said, the deck could be tuned a little bit more, and that's what we're doing today. So this was based on a less than $50, including the cost of the deck itself, which should be $10 to $15, depending on where you can get it. I wouldn't spend any more if you can't find it for that. They'll definitely be more available. They're print to demand. So what did we go down in this deck? So, went down blue, Rally the Rearguard. So this is a great card. It does suck up a little bit of the defense. Shadow Brute's not great at defending. There are some cards that literally have no defense. But taking this out it has 4 power. It doesn't do the thing you want. And yes, it's got good pitch value, but we replaced it with some blues anyway. So we dropped blue Rally the Rearguard. We also dropped the yellow Lunartide Plunderer. This is just really not, it's an expensive card that's 6 power, yes. Defends for only 2. And the activated ability, your on-hit ability, isn't really always going to be good. So we took that out as well. It just wasn't really going to do the thing that we wanted to do. We took out the 2 blood tributes as well. It's nice when you're swinging in with a meat axe to be able to know what you're going to draw and discard if you're empty-handed or something like that. But at the same time, it's just not really that great. And again, maybe it's just there for pitch value. And lastly, we took out the blue Boneyard Marauders. So this was just not a great card to have in here because it's... Yes, it banishes things, so it helps to banish things for the Blood Debt trigger for your hero, but it's only coming in for 4. Yes, it's cheap. It's great in that regard. But ultimately, it doesn't really do all that much. It doesn't feed anything outside of really just pitch value. So really, that's maybe all you're using it for. Maybe you can give it a go again somehow, but ultimately it's just not, doesn't swing hard enough, doesn't smash hard enough. So what do we put in? Well, the big one we put in was Shadow Puppetry. So this was the base deck. We're going to jump over to the modified deck here. So Shadow Puppetry was our big inclusion here. This was our $10 card. We put 2 copies in, so that put us right up close to the limit on the price of what we want to do for upgrade, but I'm sure the price of this will come down. Unlimited's opening now. You can get them for $10. I'm sure that price will drop soon, so it might even be even cheaper. So what does this do? It bumps power and it gives go again. And it also allows you to banish things that can turn off the Blood Debt for the turn as well. It's free. It defends for 2, not great, but otherwise it's pretty good. So that's sort of like the big inclusion, the chase card, one might say, for the deck that we put in there. What else did we put in there? We put in 2 blue Wrecker Romp. So not a Shadow Brute card, just a Brute card. Defends for 3, has 6 power, allows you to discard a card. If you're looking to get something into your graveyard that you need to have 6 power, slap it in there, allow it to banish maybe some other way, so it's not too bad. Doesn't have a go again. It doesn't really allow you to banish anything for it, but it can feed the graveyard, and this is an attack maybe in the early game, which is what you want to do. Early game, you don't want to be turning on or banishing all those Blood Debt cards. You want to be swinging it with a Meat Axe, maybe the Wrecker Romps, things that don't force things into the Banish Zone until you can sort of feed your graveyard enough to really just turn on and go. And that's kind of what we want to do with this, is looking to fill the graveyard with a bunch of 6-power cards, and then mid-game or late game, turn on and start really smashing with big haymakers. A lot of these big Blood Debt cards. Banish things, turn off Blood Debt, and just win. It can be kind of dangerous. You got to figure out where that turning point is, that inflection point of, okay, cool, I could start really beating in and feeding the Banish Zone and not worrying about it. So that's sort of like, this card does if it gets banished, it triggers. It doesn't have the inherent banish things when it attacks. So Maybe this is an early game play. Maybe it's for pitch value. Maybe it's defense value. You'll have to see how it goes. Blue Howl from Beyond and red Howl from Beyond. So we added these mostly because you can play them on your Banish Zone, and they do buff attacks. They can also just pitch or block a little bit. They just kind of juice things up a little bit, and if you're not having a card that has Go Again, maybe you want to swing in for a little bit more damage. It's also something you can do sort of repeatedly. So maybe it makes your base power attack, which a lot of these are 6, go to 7. That's a little bit of a tougher break point there because, you know, some cards can defend for 3, you defend for 2 cards. Boom, it's easy for a 6 power attack. This bumps it up 1 or 3, puts it into another block zone, makes it a little bit more difficult to block. Barraging Beatdown was another inclusion here. This is mostly to, again, help with getting in damage. It can be part of a big turn. If you're looking to go like Howl from Beyond, Barraging Beatdown, say get +5, intimidate them. It gets buffed if they don't block with 2 more cards. I mean, at that point, they're probably going to block with 2 more cards because it's going to be huge, but it forces them to if they don't want extra damage. Maybe they got something in their hand they really like. So ultimately, that's what in there is a one-of. You can use it for pitch value. You can use it to buff things. It sort of depends upon when you draw it and what you want to use it for. It's better in the late game. That's why there's only 1 copy. And then we put in, this is odd, we put in 2 cards that don't actually have 6 power here. Now we put in 2 Dread Screamers. So these, they only had the reds and the blues. We put in the yellows to try to give something else that has Go Again. So when you go, with Levia, you got to go hard. So ultimately, later in the game, you want to be going again sometimes. The Dread Screamers allow you to do that if you trigger that banish thing. So that's where this comes in handy, is it does have the inherent banish, and it can give Go Again if you trigger Levia. So that's nice for like the early mid game when you're really starting to get your train going and you start beating in and going for a little bit more power. So that leaves the entire deck that are action cards. There's only 4 cards. It's the yellow Dread Screamer and the blue Dread Screamer that are under 6 power. So every attack action card in your graveyard except for those 4. So out of the 30, 26 of them will turn on or will trigger your hero ability and turn off Blood Debt. So we have a sufficient number of cards, more than the original deck, that will not, or that will help you trigger that. So that's kind of where we went with it. As far as armor goes, Barkbone Strappings. This will help you give you some resources for that big turn. Ultimately, it's got Battle Worn as well, so you can get a little bit of a block out of it, and can really help when you need those extra resources. If you have a really huge turn and maybe you don't want to pitch things because you have a way to go again with maybe Dread Screamer or Shadow Puppetry, you need those extra resources. Barkbone Strappings will do it for you. We added the Ironhide Legs. Again, this can be sort of Iron Rot Legs if you really don't want to pitch those resources on your opponent's turn, or if you always want to have them without having to worry about your cards. Again, play with your meta. It sort of depends on what you do. We added in Null Rune Boots and Null Rune Gloves to round out the package there. So ultimately, it came with the Spellfray Cloak, Hope Merchant's Hood, Who's the Shadow Beast, and a Goliath Gauntlet. Oh, as well. No, sorry. I think we put in Hope Merchant's Hood now that I think about it. And it came with the Ebon Fold as well. So got a little bit of Spell Void there as well with the Cloak and the Ebon Fold. So that is the deck. So it's a little bit more juicy, a little bit more consistent we're hoping for, and a little bit maybe go wide than the base deck. So the addition of the Dread Screamers and the Shadow Puppetry give you a little bit more of a go again. You also do have the Hooves to give you an extra action point as well. So that can be pretty good. And you can. What's good about this one is you can choose to destroy it when you see something happen. So it's like, cool, I can get another action point when I see a 6 get dropped. So it's sort of like this optional go again. You don't have to activate it until you know that you can make a big turn by having that 6 power card banished. So that is the deck. I think it's exciting to play this deck. We also almost added a couple other cards, so maybe more Barraging Beatdowns if you feel like that's really what helps you sort of push through that end game. Early pitch them and then play them out later. That might help. Deep-Rooted Evil, it's pretty cheap. It's a card that you can play at or banish zone if there was a 6 power card banished this turn. And it's a 6 power card. It's an okay card. It could go in here. We didn't really do it because there isn't, like, you only have one Who's the Shadow Beast. You got 6 Dread Screamers. You have 2 Shadow Puppeters. There's not a lot of inherent go again, so you're not necessarily going to have those banished and be ready to have another attack that turn. Like, cool, you banish something, you can play out of your banish zone, but if you don't have any action points, you fall flat. So it doesn't really have that tight synergy that we really want in the deck. And we also thought about adding Guardian the Shadow Realm, defense reaction. We ended up not going that way. Even though we have some cards don't have great defense, we're looking to block early, maybe lose a little bit of life through poor blocks, and then swing with the meat, actually, and then turn on and go later. And we don't really want those later on. So they're only good early. Being able to recur them is great, but you don't really want to be doing that. You want to be beating down. So yeah, so that's about it. That's all for the deck. So that is the Levia upgrade deck. And yeah, that'll do all for the video. Next week we'll be doing Bolton. So if you're looking for some hatchet fun, come back next week for Bolton. And with that, this is Tap for Brew Tap Cat saying thank you so very much for coming and hanging and watching this video. We will see you soon. Cheers.